Example 5, Part A. Solve 2 to the x minus 3 equals 4. Well, on the left, we have base 2. On the right, we have the number 4. We can write 4 in base 2. Do you agree that 2 squared is 4? I hope so. Now, just bringing down the left-hand side of the equation, I have base 2 to an exponent that happens to be an expression in x equals base 2 to an exponent. So therefore, if base 2 to something equals base 2 to something else, those two things have to be equal. I just have to solve x minus 3 equals 2. So x equals 5 is the solution. Let's check that. 2 to the 5 minus 3 equals 2 squared. Well, sure enough, 5 minus 3 is 2. So that worked, right? Makes it very simple once you do your change of base and have the same base on both sides of the equation. Now part B. This is 1/5. I'm going to rewrite that because of that line going through there. It's going to keep creeping back in this Word document so you can see it clearly. I have 1/5 equals base 5 to the 1 minus 2x. Well, I like base 5 better than I like base 1/5, but really there's more than one way to solve this equation. I'd rather look at 1/5 as base 5 to the negative 1 power. And then on both sides of the equation, I have the same base, and then I have a simple linear equation to solve. So if 5 to the negative 1 power equals 5 to the quantity 1 minus 2x, then negative 1 has to equal 1 minus 2x. I just solved this for x. So I could subtract 1 from both sides, then divide by negative 2. So x equals 1 is the solution, and I'll leave that for you to check. Now part C, 64 to the 5y equals 16 to the y plus 1. So you guys are going to get better at recognizing that we can write 64 in base 4 and 16 in base 4. Well, how do I get to 64 by multiplying 4 how many times? Well, 3 times. 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 again is 64. So 64 in base 4 is 4 cubed. That's all to the 5y power still. And then 16 I think is a little more obvious to us. That is 4 squared, because 4 times 4 is 16, y plus 1. So I'm going to use the power to the power rule and write this as 4 to the 15y. So 3 times 5y is 15y. And then 4 times, distribute the 2 to the y plus 1, I get 2y plus 2. Now I have base 4 to something equals base 4 to something else. So those two things have to be equal. So I'm just solving 15y equals 2y plus 2. So I'm going to subtract 2y from both sides, then divide by 13, and I get that y equals 2/13. And I'll let you check that on your own.